Good evening. You're watching the X Factor. I'm Neha Khanna. Our big focus tonight. It's the world's largest biometric database, and it's been at the heart of a massive controversy and mired in litigation since the centre decided to make it mandatory for every Indian citizen to link their Aadhaar or unique identification number to their mobile phone numbers, bank accounts, and practically every government service and welfare scheme that you can possibly think of. Now, after a string of controversies and vociferous protests over allegations of major privacy and security breaches, the UIDAI, the authority that runs the government's Aadhaar program, has introduced a new security layer, a virtual ID system meant to check, leak and misuse of the biometric data collected from millions of Indians. A randomly generated 16-digit temporary number instead of your 12-digit permanent biometric Aadhaar number can now be shared for various services, for instance at airline or railway counters. This is the single biggest overhaul of the Aadhaar system since it was introduced in 2010. This move comes days after a report in the Tribune newspaper alleged that Aadhaar data can be illegally accessed through WhatsApp for as little as 500 rupees. And while the UIDAI claimed that there was no breach of sensitive data such as people's biometrics, what they then did was widely seen and criticized as shooting the messenger. They went ahead and filed a case against the news organization and the journalist who filed the story. And while many have welcomed the latest security feature, there are the skeptics who ask how will this mitigate the risk of misuse of any information that's already been disclosed. Former Finance Minister and Senior Congress leader P. Chidambaram has been scathing in his criticism, saying under compulsion millions of people have already shared their Aadhaar number with many service providers. The new security layer is like locking the stable after horses have bolted. Then there are those already fighting a case in the Supreme Court against Aadhaar who say they will challenge this security feature too. They argue the new virtual ID is untested and unworkable. Activists who have already been waging this battle say making Aadhaar linking mandatory violates the right to privacy and the large-scale sharing of. The question is, will the new security feature be enough to put those fears to rest? Will it plug all the gaps and finally make our data safe? And what about the possible misuse of data that may have already been shared and compromised?
It's Aadhaar everywhere. From your mobiles to bank accounts to PAN cards to voter IDs to even LPG connections, they all need to be on Aadhaar. But after convenience issues and security scares and a long argument in the Supreme Court, here's what's changing.
First big change is the virtual Aadhaar. That sort of works with an OTP on your mobile phone. The second big change is the ability to link your Aadhaar to your mobile number with just a phone call and not by visiting a customer care center.
How exactly will it work? When you log on to the UIDAI website, you provide your Aadhaar ID. So you feed in your Aadhaar details, and then there is a unique 16-digit virtual ID that will in fact be generated for you, and that will in fact be shared with the service providers. And this virtual ID will of course only be shared with the service providers. So this is, a safety net, a mechanism above what already exists.
Both the GST and Aadhaar, these are experiments which are not to be foisted on the people without first being completely explained and finally settled.
We are hopeful that they will, if there is some breach into it, and they will cover that up and ensure that it doesn't happen again.
Some very serious thought is required to be put into this whole issue.
This is extremely dangerous. This has very, very severe implications with regard to not only privacy but various other things put together.
It can lead to invasion of the privacy and invasion of citizens' data and leading to many abuses.
Process is huge. The governance logic does exist, but challenges and concerns remain. The priority is clear. If the whole of India were to shift everything to Aadhaar, then the ease of its use needs to be sorted out. Otherwise, we all will be spending much of time doing paperwork and babugiri. That's not good for the economy. And assurances on privacy and safety will not suffice. More work needs to be done to fill the gaps and make it absolutely bulletproof. Literally the whole of India is at stake. the savings, the benefits, and the convenience of having everything on one ID would be extremely useful, but much remains to be done. What, by when, and how is still a subject matter of debate. With video journalist Sethu Madhavan, J.S. Seelan in Delhi for NewsX.
All right, let's now take a quick look at the big questions we're asking on the show tonight. Will the new virtual ID security feature finally make Aadhaar and our data safe? Will the added security layer adequately plug all the gaps and put people's fears to rest? Do critics have a point when they argue that the new feature does not secure the data already shared? And will the new measures be enough to convince the top court about the security of Aadhaar data? Let's introduce our panel. We're joined tonight by Amit Malviya, BJP spokesperson, Nasir Salim, managing partner, Flexi Capital, also a member of the Samajwadi Party. Joining me here in the studio, Muhammad Khan, spokesperson for the Congress, Karnika Seth, cyber law expert, and Vikas Gupta, Supreme Court lawyer. Amit Malviya, let me begin with you. As I said earlier, many have welcomed this latest security feature, the virtual ID system. But there are those who say, how will this mitigate the risk of the misuse, possible misuse of data that has already been shared with service providers? Now, former Finance Minister P. Chidambaram tweets, under compulsion, millions of people have already shared their Aadhaar number with service providers. The new security layer is like locking the stable after the horses have bolted. How would you respond to that criticism? And it's not just the Congress, might I point out. This has also been raised by many of those who are already fighting this case against Aadhaar in the Supreme Court.
Yeah, just a couple of points quickly. We have about 119 crore Aadhaar cards issued. There has not been a single breach of the Aadhaar system. And biometrics is the soul of the Aadhaar system. The few instances that have been reported in the recent past have not been of breach but of unauthorized access. That's point number one. Point number two is that we have to understand what is the details that the Aadhaar captures other than the biometrics. They are basically your demographic, name, age, sex, your address, your mobile number and your email are optional. Now that is some data that is available on several other public domain, including your election list and your ration card. But I do understand that even though they might be available everywhere else, we need to assure and allay any fears that people may have regarding even this basic data security, and that is why the two-layer security has been introduced. Now, we have a 12-digit Aadhaar number that makes for about 100 billion permutations of numbers, and we have only 1 billion cards out. Therefore, the probability of a very large number, as is being said by some people, is not there. In fact, it is very, very remote.
But on what basis do you say that, Amit? Also, you just mentioned that, there has been no breach of security, no biometrics have been given away anywhere. You're completely disregarding the reportage done by the Tribune newspaper very recently, which at the very least demonstrated how for as little as 500 rupees, let me finish, for as little as 500 rupees, you can access someone's Aadhaar data on WhatsApp. And you then went ahead and shot the messenger.
I'm sorry. You see, the Tribune story is not about a leak or a breach of the Aadhaar system. It is about an unauthorized access through somebody's ID who had a privileged access. The two are different.
But that is the whole point, Amit. If somebody has bad intent, they will try and seek unauthorized access to your data and mine, and it can be done with as little as 500 rupees. That is the whole point. But you've still not answered my question. You've still not responded to the criticism that's come from people like Mr. Chidambaram and the petitioners who are saying that it's all very well for you to have introduced this new feature now. What about the data that was already shared earlier? But you seem to think there is no problem. Fact is, Amit, that there are many people who are worried.
No. That's not what I've said. That's not what I've said. Please don't imply things that I haven't said. The fact of the matter is that Mr. Chidambaram asks very good question since he's in the opposition. I want to ask him a counter question. This idea was floated in 2010. They were in power till 2014 and they were quite gung-ho about Aadhaar, even though they did not do much of it. Why was this not implemented? Now left to us,
okay, let's get a response from the Congress.
Today is the utility it has been put to, and we have introduced all these mechanisms.
The worry is
We
on
are
account of the
we have taken
mandatory
all the
linking,
feedback,
Amit.
we've done
The
everything that's required to fix
worry
it.
is not about Aadhaar per se, but about the mandatory linking. But I will get Mohammad Khan of the Congress to respond to the question you just asked.
Neha,
Yes.
Aadhaar is voluntary. Please do not call it mandatory. Aadhaar is voluntary.
Well, that is certainly not how it appears to an average citizen who gets a message from their bank, from their mobile service operator every single day saying link or else. All right, go ahead, Mohammed, come in here. He's saying your government brought it in. Why now? Why so much brouhaha now? Okay, let's get a response from Mohammed. Mohammed, you guys brought it in. Why so much brouhaha now?
नहीं, वैसे मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लगता है इन लोगों को बोलने दिया कीजिए. इनकी बातें सुनकर अगर कोई आधार कार्ड ले रहा होगा वो भी छोड़ देगा. They are the best argument against Aadhaar itself. Amit, I'm constantly shocked and depressed at the lack of information you guys have when you come and represent your position on Aadhaar. In fact, I'm tempted to believe you get it off the Modi app, and that is the reason for your lack of details. You're right, Aadhaar was indeed conceived under the UPA, but it was conceived as a very, very different creature. Now, let me tell you the differences between your Aadhaar and our Aadhaar, and Neha, you pointed this out. We never sought to make it mandatory for 139 schemes. Amit, you deny that data breaches have happened. You admitted in the Supreme Court, your advocate, your Attorney General of India admitted on May 2014 that breaches have happened. You're working to remedy them. August of last year, a young man, Abhinav Srivastava, Google him. You have a low-level troll army at your disposal. Ask them to Google the name of Abhinav Srivastava. He hacked into the database and was investigated by the UIDAI authority, and now the Tribune story. I want to say this. You add this layer of security. Fine, Neha. All well and good.
Why would you not welcome it? Let's see,
what.
Aadhaar is a work in progress. If the government is working towards improving the system, why not welcome it?
So I'll tell you one thing, right? Aadhaar by itself is a fantastic idea, but the toxic version that they've implemented has nothing to do with the way we conceived it. You asked a very good question. Why make it mandatory for 139 schemes? And when the Attorney General K.K. Venugopal was asked this in court, he did not even know it had been extended to 139 schemes. Death certificates, railway tickets. आपको शमशान घाट जाना, आपको आजकल आधार कार्ड दिखाना पड़ता है. And listen, when Amit comes here and says things like, "Oh my God, no essential information is connected," that's exactly what you're seeking to do. You're trying to create a digital map of our daily lives, so you have more information on the individual.
And he's saying it's not mandatory, but fact is it is.
It is mandatory.
Okay.
My last point is this. Amit, my last point to you is this. You add this layer of security. It is a good idea. Amit, listen to me. I didn't interrupt you yet. Now, see, it is a good idea, but it doesn't address any of the two fundamental problems. The problem is of making it mandatory without giving any reason for the same. And number two,
but I'm still asking you,
exclusions.
Why?
Exclusions.
Okay, problem with exclusion, all right. But again, the question I want to ask you is that, you know, if the government is telling you that it's a work in progress, they're willing to take feedback, incorporate necessary changes as they go along, boost the security, why not welcome it?
I would have welcomed this move if Aadhaar was not mandatory. If Aadhaar was like, if they were presenting Aadhaar, look, this is such a fantastic alternative. Link yourself to it, and people were opting in. People like you and me were opting for it. Then this would make sense. You're forcing us to comply with the system.
So then you're taking us back to the earlier debate. You're taking us back to the earlier debate about the mandatory linking. All right, Karnika Seth, come in here. How do you respond to this new feature that's been introduced by the UIDAI? There are, of course, those who are saying, what about data that's already been disclosed? And then there are those, the petitioners in the Supreme Court, who are also saying they're going to challenge this because they believe that this is untested technology and therefore unworkable. Would you agree with that?
Well, as far as whatever data has already been collected by, of citizens by linking Aadhaar by service providers, certainly there's a scare because of the reportings which have been made recently. That issue is in itself quite a crucial issue to address. Apart from that, the new virtual ID which has come into being now, how does it really secure the entire scenario? Now, the apprehensions from a consumer would be, okay, if you're giving an OTP layer, what if this virtual ID gets compromised? People would probably, whether they would be changing it.
Temporary. It is temporary. You can change it every single day, every time you're availing of a different service.
Is it, now you have to explain, is it like a digital signature? Is it something which is, which could be saved on a desktop and somebody else could misuse it? Now these are all questions which have to be answered. As far as unauthorized breaches are concerned, they would amount to hacking if it is even if it's by an authorized agency who has exceeded the power, or somebody who has unauthorisedly breached this particular data which is within their organization. Now that also amounts to hacking. under the IT
So
Act.
are you saying, Karnika, that you are really not convinced by this new feature?
No, I think unless they explain it to a greater detail, because technically just by introduction of a 16-digit virtual ID, which is
It doesn't inspire much confidence is what you're saying. Nasir, give me one moment. I will come to you. Vikas Gupta, weigh in on this. What do you think about the new security feature that has been introduced?
There are two aspects. The petition which is pending in the Supreme Court is on
Mandatory
privacy.
linking. Yes.
And second was the security issue.
Yes.
So as far as privacy is concerned, even before Aadhaar was made mandatory for various schemes, you've been sharing your privacy on Facebook, on YouTube, various other agencies. You've already been giving details.
Okay.
So I don't think that's a bogey which has been raised by the opposition for quite some time.
Okay.
As far as security, I think this virtual ID, what has been introduced by UIDAI today is going to be a shot in the arm for the government as far as the petition which is pending in the Supreme Court is concerned.
All right.
So I think that is going to come handy as far as privacy is concerned, because with the limited access of data, whatever is required by the various agency, whether it's a
So you do
mobile
believe that
operator,
this builds a stronger case for Aadhaar in the Supreme Court?
Exactly,
Okay.
because as far as the privacy was concerned, what you are sharing in Aadhaar, on Facebook you are sharing more details. You are even sharing details of your family.
Except that is not mandatory. Okay, let me get Nasir to weigh in on this. Nasir, you heard what the other panelists are saying. What is your view, firstly, on this entire Aadhaar debate, and secondly, on this new security feature that has been introduced? The government is saying that this should put all your fears to rest.
See, Neha, I heard everybody, and I think I have just 2-3 very clear, crisp points to make out here. See, number one, if you look at what UIDAI has done today and the circular that they've sent out today, they are talking about splitting third-party providers to whom you're supposed to give this virtual IDs, apparently, to two platforms. One is global AUs, which is global authentication user agents, which will primarily be, banks, mobile operators, government agencies. And the second one is local authentication user agents, which will be startup firms, smaller firms. Now, the premise of this entire discussion today is obviously about enhancing safety for citizens of India.
Yes.
Now, for the global authentication user agents, Aadhaar will still continue to be the only number which will be sent as a feed to them to verify. So, by this very logic, Aadhaar and this 16-digit virtual ID stands absolutely failed in principle of protecting identities of our citizens, because you need only 12-digit Aadhaar numbers there.
Okay.
The only case in which your virtual IDs will actually have an impact, which are going to be used, and Neha, you can verify this information from the circular that they've given out today, is when they will be sent to local authentication user agents such as small firms and startups. Number one. Number two, my second point is that India's population, 2/3 of India's population resides in rural India, and this entire virtual ID has failed to address the concerns of paper-based Aadhaar.
Yes, I was going to bring that up next.
Yes, because you need to, in order to apply for your virtual ID, you need to get access to the UIDAI website, Neha.
Okay,
and in this very case, it has not been addressed, and that is the biggest flaw.
Okay, that's a fair point.
Obviously, the government has done this. We understand, and I respect this as a banker today, because I respect this. That they are looking at enhancing security.
Okay.
But it has not been done adequately.
It's not enough. Okay, Amit Malviya, respond to what we just heard there. Okay.
And my last point,
very quickly, Nasir. Very quickly. Yes.
Neha, my last point is that, the fact is that we've had a situation like this in Equifax in the US. I would like to quote this, with social security numbers which are as sensitive as carrying your biometric data and other points, such as your passport numbers and driving license, so on and so forth.
All right.
That is something which again needs to be addressed.
Okay. We've heard you, Nasir.
There has to be identity theft.
Let's get a response now from Amit. Amit, you heard what Nasir there is saying. He's saying that, if you go to a global authentication agency, you'll still have to share your Aadhaar number. One. And two, there are other concerns being expressed that generating a virtual ID means you need digital access, you need a fair amount of digital literacy, and that it also introduces certain transaction costs. Your response?
Well, two things. One, I just heard the cyber expert on your panel say that there is a concern with the data that has already gone out. Let me just point out that if you have a mobile connection, whether or not you have taken an Aadhaar verified mobile connection or you have had one for many years, they will always have your address, your name, your sex, your age. That is all the data that they will get from Aadhaar and nothing else. The Aadhaar system does not ever get to know what you do with your mobile or your bank account to whichever you link. These are two points which should be very clear, because there is a propaganda that is going around, and I want to just put this to rest.
Okay.
As far as the second point is concerned about digital literacy, you know, let us not sound very patronizing, because there are already 119 crore Aadhaar cards out, and obviously it covers the vast swath of our rural population.
But these are not necessarily people who've access to computer to get their Aadhaar number. Is that what you're saying?
Can I finish, please?
Yes.
You know, I've heard your questions. I'll respond to it. If you keep interjecting, then we can't have a conversation. There are two things. There are additional security features which are there, which can be used by people who probably have digital access and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to any agency to generate a virtual ID. Several banks today have this feature, and UIDAI will have this feature, and you can keep changing the virtual ID every time you transact. That's point number one. Point number two is the Aadhaar has used biometrics as a means so as to it can cater to the rural population of this country who are not that digitally literate.
Yes, but then the issue of generating this virtual ID still remains, I guess. But you're saying others can do it for you. Okay, I'm out of time. Mohammed, quickly respond to what he's saying. He's saying this is opposition propaganda. You also heard Vikas Gupta saying you're already sharing so much data on Facebook and other platforms. Yeah.
अमित, देखिए मैं आपको बताता हूँ 2012 से लेकर 14 तक मैं इसके क्रियान्वयन में शामिल था। मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ रूरल डेवलपमेंट। मुझे एक बात बताओ, जब डिजिटल लिटरेसी नहीं, डिजिटल एक्सेस की बात है, जब इंटरनेट ही फेल हो जाता है एंड यू आर अनेबल टू वेरीफाई, वेयर विल यू मेक श्योर दैट द पीपल गेट देयर एंटाइटलमेंट्स, बॉस? एंड यू स्टिल हैव एन 8 to 14% फेलियर रेट एज पर द आईडी इनसाइट रिपोर्ट दैट अमाउंट्स टू 8 to 14 crores, द साइज ऑफ अ स्मॉल कंट्री, एंड यू सेइंग दैट्स द कॉस्ट ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस। बॉस, ऑल आई एम सेइंग इज डोंट मेक इट मैंडेटरी।
You're taking us back to that point about mandatory linking. I'll give you the last word, Karnika. I'm completely out of time.
What I feel is the security needs to be really addressed. Virtual ID alone will not be sufficient. Even with the OTP and other things being there,
a lot more needs to be done.
Data will need to be taken in any case.
All right, Amit, I'm sorry.
Last point, Neha.
Yes.
Linking with Aadhaar ensures that the money of the central schemes reaches to the last man.
All right. I guess clearly this is the debate.
Previous government.
Okay, clearly this is a debate that's going to continue. The biggest question is, will the government and the UIDAI be able to convince the Supreme Court, which is going to in fact begin hearing all these petitions from the 17th of this month? That's a wrap on the show. Thanks very much to our panel for joining us.